I'm Boaz Abel. I'm here with my man,
Serge and Sing.
All right, and we're two dudes, one spirit, where we talk about everything spirituality as best we can because we don't know anything. So it's like we're just trying to go through life, right?
Slowly trying to figure it out. Probably failing a bunch along the way. And if you're in the same boat, welcome. That's why we're here. We're just two guys trying to figure it out, and hopefully that helps y'all along as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I think we end up like researching everything that we talk about like 20 minutes before we get on the program. So it's like if
We
anybody
we
wants,
we
huh?
have a lot of strong feelings that then
Yeah.
we realize, wait, that's not enough. Just right before we hop on, and that's why we're here.
Yeah, I mean, we literally had like a 10-minute conversation before this about the next episode, which is going to be kind of weird. But and then the funny thing is like this episode is called Jesus, Muhammad, and Buddha Walk into a Bar. But it's like I know little about Buddhism. I know a lot about Islam because I am that, and it's like, Serge, you have your own things, right?
Yeah. I'm predominantly Sikh, so I'm technically closest to Buddhism by the nature of it technically being more dharmic philosophy. But like I know a little bit about Buddhism. I would not say I am the expert on Buddhism whatsoever.
Yeah, I can relate. I think for me, it's like Buddhism is a mystery because like one thing is like it's like the idea about kind of like a supreme being, like that divine energy. So it's like I get like a lot of different kind of understandings from Buddhism when it comes to like the divinity. So
Hmm.
that's always been interesting to me, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, but if Jesus, Muhammad, and Buddha walked into a bar, I kind of don't think Muhammad would walk in. He would just kind of post up outside. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, there's been changes the past couple of years. There's a lot of bars really moving the non-alcoholic direction. I think there's space for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's like I was kind of like reading on like kind of like the understanding of like Buddha, Muhammad, and Jesus. I think like Jesus would kind of go in and like hook everybody up with wine, and then Muhammad would kind of like post up in the back and just kind of like give what the Muslims call is dawah, and which is like kind of like an explanation of Islam.
Hmm.
Post up in the corner and doing that, and maybe Buddha, which is kind of like be that dude that just kicks in the corner like a wallflower. And it's like I don't want to talk to anybody. It's like I'm in my own space right now. So
It
that's
depend.
kind of
It
like my take
depends.
on that.
Yeah, it definitely depends on what mood Buddha's in. He goes through a couple of different ones, through his process of like getting towards enlightenment and teaching the others on what it really means to like kind of remove yourself from the cycle. Um, it's yeah, like I said, know a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah. So like, what do you kind of like bring in from the Buddhism, and how does like Sikhism like kind of like relate to that? Because like one thing is like I remember when we were talking about like during this podcast before, and
Mhm.
we really didn't want to kind of pit like religions together. It's just all
Yeah.
about kind of like a universal spirituality and like how
Mhm.
people deal with spirituality, how they get to their endpoint, if there is an endpoint, and kind of like the modality between that.
Yeah.
So it's like we're not, yeah, what we're doing is like we're not like pitting anybody else against each other. It's like we're just kind of understanding like the spirituality in Buddhism. And it's like I don't know very much about Sikhism or Buddhism.
Mhm.
So it's like you said, they kind of relate to each other. Like, how can you kind of explain that as far as like a spiritualistic type of
Yeah,
thing?
I'll try not to go super in depth. I know I can be a little bit rambly sometimes,
Hmm.
but let me preface in saying like I'm technically not an expert in either. I definitely have a lot more knowledge in Sikhism, just being Sikh and being raised Sikh.
Hmm.
But at its core fundamental framework with Buddhism, Hinduism, and Sikhism really. They all follow what is effectively the dharmic philosophies. Dharma or karma, like that's the other kind of way to look at it.
Hmm.
is really like oversimplified. It's the fundamental philosophy of reincarnation and then having a cycle of life and death. All three of these religions, all three of these spiritual practices kind of have different ways of effectively escaping that cycle. Buddhism, very, very specifically from, well, I can't say specifically because there's a couple different types of Buddhism out there. Like, I think the most common one that's known by the West is forms of Zen Buddhism, which really comes mostly from Japan.
Hmm.
So it's got a couple different other influences, kind of from Japanese Shintoism and stuff like that. But there's like Chinese Buddhism, which has its own kind of thing going on. But the most interesting one, in my personal opinion, is probably Tibetan Buddhism, which
Hmm.
is really where, if you want to talk about like mythologies, lore, and stuff like that, from a religious perspective, most of that is probably Tibetan, and they're really intense about stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
generally speaking, the core goal of Buddhism is kind of understanding that, like, it's oversimplified to say that nothing matters, but it's more so that things simply happen with or without your input, right? Things happen um, kind of like a flowing river where you can't really change the direction of a river consciously. Like, trying to change the direction of a river is like a strong amount of effort for anyone to expend um, to do it very, very effectively. And there's a good chance that the river is simply going to flow in the direction that it wants to flow, regardless, no matter what you do. Even if you dam it, it's going to eventually overcome that dam, given enough time and energy, and it's going to
Mm.
flow the direction it wants to flow. So it's understanding that the world and actions and reactions kind of happen automatically regardless of your real input. Like, you can still have your own actions, but it's still, your actions are based off of a prior reaction that you're having to something else that you may or may not have control over. And so just understanding that lack of control is kind of a functional framework of reaching a form of enlightenment, in terms of understanding that things simply flow and you can kind of detach yourself from it. You don't have to worry about a framework of suffering. You don't have to worry about that cycle of uh, what is it, death and rebirth,
Hmm.
purely because you understand that you can recluse yourself from the cycle. Things simply do happen. That's kind of the core foundational concept of
Right,
like the way Buddhists look at dharmas, like the dharmic cycle.
right.
The Hindus kind of have a, I don't 100% know how to explain the way the Hindus focus on the dharmic cycle, but the best way to look at it is that they tend to focus on reaching a form of karmic balance.
Hmm.
That doesn't necessarily mean like traditionally a balance of good and evil or something like that. That's a very, very big oversimplification as far as karma is considered. But
Right.
it's this more universal essence, or like pseudo universal essence, where you kind of maintain balance with a certain type of system. That could move into like some weird, interesting ways of explaining that through like frequencies or spiritual frequencies, which I definitely am not the expert to talk about. Though I can totally give my opinion, maybe on another episode, on the way I have learned about that stuff and kind of can't explain it to the best of my
Right.
abilities. With Sikhs, I think it's actually very, very similar to Buddhism, in the context of you're trying to find a framework of like self irrelevance or ego death, which I think the Buddhists tend to focus on a lot more heavily as well. But the difference is that with Sikhs there is this concept of a central like deity of some kind. Like, for us it's more of a creator figure rather than a always consistent proactive figure. Like, God can have interference in your life, God may or may not have interference in your life.
Hmm.
That part doesn't necessarily matter, but the idea is to understand that all things in some sense are connected and interconnected as one thing. Like, if there is a hierarchy in Sikhism, the only hierarchy that really exists is that there is the universe and then there is God, right?
Hmm.
That's really a core idea. So it's like everything in the universe is pretty much equal to itself, because it is um, under the hierarchy of just this other divine figure.
Right.
And so that understanding then means that when you do have that enlightenment understanding, you do die. You then effectively rejoin with God in like
Hmm.
a, I would say, non-conscious kind of way. So
Hmm.
less like a Christian going to heaven and meeting with God in a heaven orientation, more of a loss of oneself, but in a like a divine peace kind of way.
Hmm.
And then the other thing that I think is different with Sikhism is that I was talking to a friend of mine who has a little bit more history with Judaism and Christianity.
Right.
And when I was having this conversation, I think he probably explained it the right type of way. Um, Sikhs tend to focus on a concept of grace, where enlightenment is not something that is gained through personal effort. Enlightenment is eventually given to individuals when they are ready,
Hmm.
um, through one of your like many reincarnations
Right.
by God
Right.
Himself.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's like I'm kind of like thinking about where kind of like because you're like on the other side. It's like and I'm on the kind
Yeah.
of like main three like um Judeo-Christian. It's like a lot of people don't like include Islam in there, but it is because they all follow the same
Oh
prophets
yeah.
and things
Yeah.
like that. So the whole Judeo-Christian Islamic thing, and it's like and I'm starting to like realize a lot of similarities between everything and like kind of like that God consciousness and connected to God.
Mhm.
Reincarnation isn't really a big thing in the main threes or the Abrahamic threes. Let's just call it the
Mhm.
Abrahamic threes.
So it's that concept of grace, I think. Yeah, that's one of those things that is, at least in my opinion, has been shared with me as a core Christian concept.
Mhm.
Where it can come out of that concept of forgiveness, right? If you truly accept Christ, there is a aspect of salvation, an aspect of grace that comes with that true embracing of that idea.
Mhm.
In a similar type of manner, um, Sikhs don't necessarily focus on the things that we can do proactively to reach enlightenment. It's more of a practice of simply being a part of one's community, and then trying to to your point in the Islamic context as being aware of God at all times.
Mhm.
That combination, we believe, will eventually lead to a situation where you will be given grace, you will be given a form of enlightenment. Understanding is something you can build, but true understanding in an absolute sense is gifted to you through divinity rather than through personal effort.
Right. Okay. That's what I was kind of getting to. Like so long story short, it's like I'm actually kind of like involved in a like kind of like this Christian mission right now. And it's like and I'm learning a
Mhm.
lot about Christianity. It's like it's good. It's like I just no matter what people say about God or how they deal with it, it's like
Mhm.
all these like little tidbits kind of gets me closer to that like spiritual understanding of like, one divinity, universality and things like that.
Mhm.
And like in Islam, it's kind of like if you follow the rules and you believe in God, then that's your salvation. And it's like I
Okay.
kind of see it as um in Islam it says like everything is kind of like well, everyone's born Muslim because like, it's like
Mhm.
you're born innocent, right? And everything in the universe is Muslim because it obeys Allah. It like follows the natural order of things, right?
Mhm.
And we can't really change anything but through free will as humans living in a deterministic environment.
Mhm.
It's like we do have like the ability to kind of like alter things either in a macro scale or a micro scale.
Mhm.
And so in order for us to kind of like reach that, like I said, there's no There's some Muslims that may have like their different ideas about reincarnation, but there's no real reincarnation. But in order to
Hmm.
reach that afterlife salvation that everybody talks about, heaven and hell, it's like the rules that we follow in Islam are supposed to keep us in kind of like a natural kind of harmonic level, um, kind of like just in like home in a kind of like a homeopathic state with the rest of the universe.
Okay.
And so that's one way, and then believing in God like gets us there. So it's like basically Islam is about following the rules.
Hmm.
And one thing, and it's like I'll probably tell the story in a little bit because it's kind of interesting, how I got to like a mission in Southern California, like where I have to like kind of like attend church like twice a day. I'm starting to realize that Christianity is like more faith based, which is kind of like what I see like the Buddhists kind of like having on a different type of level. But
Okay.
I'm hearing more and more. It's like Christianity is like just believe in God. And like I kind of was at like one of um, the services yesterday, and they were talking about it's like, well, if Christians are saved, just by taking Jesus Christ as your personal savior, then why do they do so many good deeds?
Hmm.
You know, and there's kind of like this like interesting thought. It's like, yeah, why do they do so many good deeds? Because they do. It's like Christians are known about like love and peace, and that's part of their faith and their spirituality. That's the biggest esoteric part about Christians. And when the preacher was saying it's like it's because that's how Jesus were.
Hmm.
Sorry, that's how Jesus was, and that's how we are supposed to be. So we emulate kind of like the love and peace of Jesus, regardless of not that we already have like a free pass to the hereafter,
Hmm.
to heaven. And like that's the first time I've ever like heard it put that way. And I was just kind of like, man, this is like interesting. It's like they
Hmm.
have a free pass, because it's like all they have to do is like, be born again. They have a free pass to like the afterlife, to go to heaven, and yet they still practice good deeds and loves. Whereas like most of like the thing is like we're well, if you guys could get a free pass, it's like why aren't you guys doing really bad things? It's like what about this Christian person who did this bad thing and this Christian did this bad thing? But it's like the way that I'm understanding it is that they still do the good stuff even though they get a free pass. Like, and that's
Hmm.
like kind of like different than Islam. It's like in Islam, you know, even if you believe in a law, you can still go to hell if
Hmm.
you don't kind of follow the rules. If you're a Christian, you can still go to heaven as long as you're a good person and some way and shape or form believe in God.
Hmm.
So it's like yeah, that's what I've kind of been learning in this whole like mission stance that I'm in right now. I don't know how that relates to Buddhism, Sikhism, and Hinduism,
Hmm.
but more or less the understanding of like where we sit in this universe and how it reacts on us and how we react on the universe as far as like reincarnation and going to
Hmm.
the afterlife, I guess.
I mean, the starting point that I would love to explore more, though realistically speaking, we might need more of like a rabbi on here, is
Yeah.
how Judaism like kind of focuses on a lot of these concepts because that's one of the historically at least the foundational religion that both Christianity and Islam kind of are born out of.
Hmm.
And there's a lot more consistent debates over the many years of Judaism in terms of like what does this actually specifically mean, what are these interpretations and that stuff. um from I guess the dharmic perspective, it's like the concept of heaven and hell technically do kind of exist in some sense, but they don't exist in the same way that the Abrahamic faiths tend to focus on, where it's like an eternal area or region where you exist for forever. It is more of a situation where it is a region that exists and you can live um through one of your what is it, your lifetimes, through one of your reincarnations. This is, I think, most prevalent probably through Hinduism,
Hmm.
where like the concept of hell, the concept of quote unquote demons, the concept of like multiple gods, obviously, including like minor gods that pretty much don't really do anything other than exist as immortal beings, kind of
Hmm.
exists. Um, so there's this real situation where in the quote unquote cosmic order of Hinduism, this is actually something related to what I looked this up a couple weeks ago because I was just interested, because I was just driving somewhere and I was thinking about it. I was like, wait a minute, um does this happen? um there in the Hindu context, it's definitely possible that you reach a form of not necessarily karmic balance, just a certain aspect of karma where you are reborn as probably something like a minor god. Like that's not inherently impossible.
Hmm.
Um but what does that mean, right?
Right.
So there, like the question that came up to me was, okay, well, if we're talking about this karmic thing, the dharma aspect of life and death, and the whole goal is to escape this cycle, for all of these religions, like how does that work if you've basically been reborn as someone who, or a being that is known to be in some sense immortal? Like how does that work?
Right.
um
Right.
so then I went into a dive of like, okay, so then do the Hindus believe gods can die, right?
Hmm.
And so I went into this really interesting thing. So technically speaking, at least from the answers I was able to find online, yes, the idea is that there are larger universal cycles of like creation and destruction, and when the universe ends, it doesn't matter if you're a god or not, you are also going to die.
Right.
That opportunity of eventually reaching a state of non reincarnation, not going to heaven or hell, not having to worry about that aspect of, you know, dealing with any sort of um, region, world, divine presence, however you want to define whatever a reincarnation cycle might look like wherever you're born.
Hmm.
That doesn't necessarily take precedence as the most important thing. The most important thing is escaping that reincarnative cycle, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense, and it kind of like takes me back to there's actually a prophet that shows up in the Old Testament, Torah, Bible, and the Quran.
Mhm.
His name in the Bible is Enoch,
Okay.
and in the Quran is Idris. I think it's Idris in the Hebrew text as well. Um,
Okay.
but he like actually shows up like way before like any of the three main
Hmm.
religions as like Thoth or Tawhidi, and it's like some researchers say that he's like the same person, like people who are like kind of like into that stuff,
Hmm.
and then he comes back as like Hermes Trismegistus, like Hermes Trismegistus, three times born.
Hmm.
um it's like it's not like I'm like a crazy researcher about any of these things, but
Yeah.
in the three mains, let's just call them the three Abrahamics. It says that he actually went up to like the highest heavens. Like in these religions, there's like seven heavens, and he went up
Hmm.
to like the highest heaven. And he also like has the ability to like reincarnate. And like I think the last reincarnation was the in the Abrahamic religions. That's Enoch. That was like his last reincarnation.
Okay.
So that's why I'm kind of like on the fence about reincarnation. And it's like when you said to be able to like step outside that reincarnation,
Hmm.
like he was like one of those prophets who actually was trying to do that, you
Hmm.
know? And it's like a lot of the other prophets, like I don't know if it was Jesus, but I know it's like Muhammad, like when he got on the there's like a lot of like really cool mythology in Islam
Hmm.
and Christianity, Islam especially. Um, when like Muhammad got on Barak, which is like kind of like this beast where he flew up to the heavens. It's said that he kind of like flew up to like the fourth heaven, but he didn't get up to like where Enoch got up to.
Hmm.
Um, so it's like tribute stories like that. Like it's like kind of interesting that um, reincarnation isn't really talked about in any of these religions, but it's something that some of the old school prophets like could do.
Hmm.
And it's like I know we're gonna have people chime in on this, and it's like I want them to because like I want them to correct me on that because I need to
Yeah.
find out more about this.
Also getting more perspectives on stuff that we don't know about, like, that's just say something wrong on the internet and people will correct you, and if as
Yeah,
long as you're pretty humble about it, you'll probably learn some things along the way.
yeah, love it. I'll be like, thank you very much, sire. Thanks for helping us out. We're gonna talk about that on the next podcast. But as far as like how I believe about, I don't know. It's like I think um when people talk about spirit, it's like I kind of don't feel like it's like within us.
Hmm.
And it's like I've never really felt like that. It's like I kind of see it as like a radio frequency, right? There's kind of like this antenna, and we'll call it the spiritual antenna. And we're kind of like this like radio that's tuned in to a certain frequency. And it's like based on the our frequency and like the tune of that frequency, it's like I think we receive um, that frequency from the spiritual antenna. So, it's like however this universe is fabricated and however it put us here, it's like we're receiving that. So I kind of really do believe that reincarnation is very possible,
Hmm.
in the kind of like the finite eternity of spirituality. So it's like, there could be somebody, um, 500 years down the line, and probably not even a human that is attuned to the same frequency as me.
Hmm.
And it's like that could be a form of reincarnation. So I kind of like perceive reincarnation as several different things.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a non-zero chance I probably talked about this on the first episode, but I
Uh,
don't think I did.
yeah.
um but there's this short story that I always kind of go back to as something that makes sense to me at least, and I feel like fits with being Sikh pretty well.
Hmm.
But it's called The Egg, and I really really like this general concept. So the idea is that you have this main character. Um, he gets into a car accident. He dies, and basically he wakes up in the afterlife, and then starts talking to this figure that is, in some sense kind of like God.
Hmm.
And so what kind of happens from there, that was kind of interesting, is he basically asks God, hey, what happens next? And did I cut out for a second? Sorry, I just my computer was doing weird
No,
things. Okay,
no,
cool.
no, no. You're fine.
um Anyways, he ends up asking God, hey, what, well, actually he first asks, it's like, hey, what about my family? And then God says, like, your family's gonna be fine. Your wife's cheating on you and your kids are gonna be okay.
Great
Which is
story.
unfortunate, but happens, it's what it is. It's like they'll be okay.
Yeah.
And then so after that he asks, it's like, okay, so what happens next? Is Do I go to heaven? Do I go to hell? What's going on? And then God's just like, well, you're going to get reincarnated. And then it's like, oh, so reincarnation's real. Okay, I guess what happens next? And then the godlike figure basically says, like, well, you're going to be reincarnated as a Chinese peasant girl in like the 1700s.
Right.
And then his response is like, wait, that doesn't make sense. How can I reincarnate in the past? That doesn't make any sense. And so God's just like, hey, time isn't really linear. That's not how that works in this like weird state that we're in. You can reincarnate whenever. And so the guy then asks, like, so what happens if I reincarnate and then I interact with myself, right? Like
Mhm.
I reincarnate at a time where I exist, and then someone else exists, that's my reincarnation. I interact with them. What goes on? And then the revelation, it's like, well, that happens all the time. That's literally every single person is just you reincarnated simultaneously, interacting with each other. All of
Fascinating.
the good stuff that's ever happened in humanity, all of the bad stuff that's ever happened in humanity, that's just you.
Wow.
right? And so the idea is, and then the response is like, and if you stayed here long enough in this area, you'd probably recall all of the memories of being all of these individuals all at once. And then the guy is just like, hey, so why is that? And so the end of the story really is about, like, the whole point of this is to mature you as a somewhat divine being through the process of
Hmm.
reincarnation, such that you become effectively like a god, and then you will, quote unquote, like, the story is called the egg, is like you will hatch and you will become basically my offspring directly,
Right.
in whatever sense that makes sense. So I see this interesting process of collecting perspective, collecting knowledge, collecting enlightenment and understanding through the process of reincarnation as something that makes a lot of sense to me, and seems to align with my perspectives on being Sikh, and like focusing on the learning aspect, that student aspect of being a student to some form of divine teacher.
Right. Yeah. See, I kind of believe that. It's like
Mhm,
I think everything it's kind of like moving towards being like hyperhuman, superhuman, overhuman. Because even I think it was Jesus. It's like I hope I'm not misquoting, but he told most of his people he was like, you could become like me and even greater.
mhm,
It's like even after they said he like turned water into wine and healed people with leprosy and like all these
mhm,
things. And it's like I think that. And it's like I do want to believe that we can be that, and it's like I think the way to believe that is through like seeking wisdom,
mhm,
like which is one big thing in Islam. It's like Islam like really doesn't turn you away from learning things. It's just like how you
mhm,
use it. That's why I'm always on the spiritual quest to figure out how I could get to like nirvana or hyperhumanism or
mhm,
um like heaven, because I know like death isn't like the the last thing.
mhm.
There has to be something. I don't know how you feel about that. How do you feel about the afterlife?
Um, I honestly don't think about it very much.
Yeah.
I'm more in the sense of like, and this might just be like, I'm technically I'm technically on the younger side of a lot of these conversations, I would still say.
Hmm.
So it doesn't kind of come to me as something I necessarily think about on a conscious basis, but I don't know if it's a relevant enough conversation for me to really have on a consistent basis, when I do feel like there's more to, learn and consume on an active basis, on every day, right? I think it's one of those things that maybe from the Sikh basis, it's like, hey, eventually I know what the end goal is, and that might just take a long time. And if that means more life cycles ahead of me, that's exhausting and sounds exhausting, but that's fine. That's just
Right.
what's gonna be.
Yeah. But I wonder if you remember what you just went through. Maybe it's like you're
um
born again and it's like you're like, oh, this is new. And it's like you're like refreshed and all that stuff.
I'm just hoping it's like a situation of like, okay, if I get a hard life and then a couple hard life, there's at least like one or two breaks, That's really
Yeah.
what I'm hoping for. It's like, hey, just give me something simple, even if it's short, right? Even if it's just like, hey, I don't have to do anything during life, but I will have cancer and I'll probably die young. That's okay.
I don't feel like any of my lives were actually that good before this. I kind of feel like this is like the last straw. So it's like after this life, it's like I'll be pretty good. So it's like I'm kind of
There you
looking
go.
forward for it. But at the same time, it's like I'm trying to like do the work to make sure that it's like it's all good. It's
Mhm,
like so hopefully whatever religion I've chosen in this life, well, I'm not going to say it's the right one. Maybe it's like the easiest one for me to get to that better life. Who
mhm,
knows? But it's funny because I think I mentioned this like a little bit earlier in the podcast about how I kind of see Christianity a little in a different light than what I
mhm,
used to see it in. Um, and it's one of those things to where it's like I don't want to seem monoptic about like religions. It's like I want to see them all as kind of like forward thinking and all like trying to be good and do the
Yeah.
good things and do the right things, right? So for me, it doesn't matter. And actually, it's like kind of crazy. It's like a lot of the Sikh people that I talk to,
Hmm.
they're like, yeah, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
what you are, what you're about. It's like just as long as you believe in God, it's cool. I don't know.
I
It's like,
mean,
yeah,
yeah, I actually I've met some Sikhs, or at least have read some material from some Sikhs that are atheists, right? And they're like,
hmm,
no, like Sikhism actually doesn't necessarily mean I can't be atheist from the stuff I've read and done things. And I'm like, that's a really interesting perspective.
hmm,
So there's this, I think there's this really interesting combination. And honestly, like obviously I have a bias from being raised Sikh and stuff, so I tend to align in that direction a lot more than most people.
right,
But the other reason I'm like fully embracing about Sikh, being Sikh and stuff is it's just one of those things that is, relatively speaking, really chill.
yeah,
As a religion, it's actually very very relaxed as a religion. It technically doesn't require you to go to a place of religious worship. Like it's,
hmm,
social expectations exist, and like personal want to go to these places exists. But by a technical standard, because God is supposed to exist ubiquitously everywhere, you can't ever be in a situation or place where you cannot simply pray to God, right? God is
right, right,
literally everywhere. So it doesn't mean it's a requirement to go. And then the other half of it is that, like, one of the questions I remember asking myself a little bit when I was a little bit younger, just kind of understanding a little bit of the religious philosophy, is just like, how do different religions deal with the way not only other religions view the world, but religions and spiritual practices that came before? How do you consolidate these things? If you're trying to create one centralized religion, how do you deal with the multitude of spiritualities that exist within history if you assume that people lived those spiritual experiences in a very real sense, right?
hmm,
For me, it's very very easy to say that if you had a specific spiritual experience where you were, like, I don't know, walking around randomly um in Greece or something, and then you had a good strong sense that you interacted with someone that might have actually been a Greek god. Like, how do you deal with that if you are, of a specific religion? In my mind, being Sikh, it's just like, yes, that's just that's just the god, kind of giving you knowledge or wisdom in a way that you can
right,
digest, given the relative framework that you exist within, right?
right,
So it's just like, for me, it's very very, like, you can simplify a lot of the major arguments down to, like, yeah, but this is how you can do it. Right? This
yeah,
just, it's one central thing. There's no reason that one central god has to look any specific type of way. And if you take my perspective of, like, the divine teaching aspect or divine teacher aspect,
hmm,
well, in my personal opinion, good teachers, like, just in real life, change their lessons to best adhere to the students that they're actually teaching.
right.
And in a similar sense, a divine teacher would, of course, do the same thing in just a wider scale.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly the like where I'm at. Like that's the point I wanted to make. And actually, it's like I've noticed this about Sikhs. It's like they're always just like chill, but it's like at the same time, it's they're like very rooted into their religion and their dogma.
Mhm.
It's a trip. It's like it's like no pressure. No
Mhm.
stress. They're like the Irie of all the religions for some reason. It's kind of cool. But like when you was talking about like a Sikh walking through like the Greeks, that's kind of like how I'm kind of seeing things right now because
Mhm.
you know so for a bit it's like it's like I was homeless, right?
Mhm.
And it's like I had to come back to LA for certain reasons. I didn't know where I was going to stay or where I was going to live, and I ended up knocking on the door of like a mission, like a Christian mission. And it's like it's like, and it's funny because like
Mhm.
when I before I got there, like I prayed to Allah.
Mhm.
It's like, I was like sleeping on the beach, and like I prayed to Allah. I was like, oh Allah, please, like, help me, whatever.
Mhm.
And it's like I researched this one mission, close by, and it's like, and I went over there, and it's like I immediately got in. And
Mhm.
so one of the things that they're like, they stress, it's like you have to attend service like
Mhm.
once or twice a day.
Mhm.
And it's like I'm learning a lot about faith
Mhm.
and just not giving up, because like these people are like, I mean, like one thing is like I love about like Christians as an organization is they
Mhm.
really reach out to help people, no matter if they're trying to get everybody to become Christian or whatever. It's like they're
Mhm.
just doing it. And it's like I really respect that. But it's like some of the teachings that like I've picked up from this community, it's like it's kind of like uplifting.
Mhm.
And most of it is faith-based spirituality. Not everybody's doing everything right. It's like the way people pray, it's like it's all different, you
Mhm.
know, different sorts of prayers and everything. But the one thing that I'm kind of getting out of that is like I'm learning from the people of another prophet. And,
Mhm.
whether it's like I'm learning from the people of Buddha, Muhammad, Abraham, any of the Greek gods. It's
Mhm.
like you said, it's all learning lessons from
Yeah.
these different people. And it's like I always see like the prophets of these religions, it's like each organization that sprouts out from them has like a little piece of that prophet.
Yeah.
It's like from Islam, it's like, I know a lot of people are getting mad at me, but it's kind of like the sword of Islam. It's like, the strength,
Mhm.
strength of the religion. um, and then Christianity, the love, and like I see a lot of things in Judaism. It's like very wise, Moses and David, like were very wise prophets. So it's like you have the
Mhm.
wisdom from there, and then Buddhism, it's like all about like oneness and self awareness.
Mhm.
So it's been it's been a pretty interesting journey, like for the past like year, and kind of
Mhm.
like understanding where my spirituality fits in like everybody else's. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
No, definitely understand that. It's kind of one of the reasons that I think that starting this podcast was kind of a goal for me was just like, hey, I'm unlikely at this point in my life, I think, to switch to a different religion. I'm like
Yeah.
highly unlikely to do that. But there's still a lot of interesting things that I think can come out of learning from other religions and spiritual practices, both in a spiritual sense, of course, both in a philosophical sense, but also in a practical sense. In terms like,
Mhm.
hey, how does this religion or these group of people kind of live in their environments, and what are the benefits that kind of come to them and the environment around them in the way that they like, you know, conduct their spiritual practices. And there's aspects of that I like to think that are kind of interconnected in ways that are really important to learn about and understand. And I see this podcast as one way to kind of broaden my horizons in terms of the things I don't understand, and then also try to see what we can do to bring those practical bits of knowledge to other people, regardless of faith, regardless of philosophy or not.
Right, right. And it's like also it's like we don't want to step on anybody's toes, but I mean with religion, it's like you're gonna have to sometimes. It's like I'm trying to be as cordial as I can.
Mhm.
Um, it's like I don't see any faults with religion. I think most of it is like just with the people.
Mhm.
It's like I don't think religion has any race or gender attached to it.
Mhm.
But when men get involved with it, and sometimes it's specifically men on a gender base, it's like that's when it becomes a little bit cutthroat, and like everybody's like trying to pretend that their religion's like a gang, and
Mhm.
and I don't think it should be like that. It's like I think all religions pretty much teaches us the understanding of oneness, the understanding of like something better than this,
Mhm.
that this isn't really the end. And like also it's like what I was talking about earlier, for us to live in harmony, not just with ourselves, but live in harmony with the universe.
Mhm.
You know, because I was like, I always used to think that when, like, if humans, like, you know, it's like we have so-called free will, and if it wasn't for us, like, say if we were just like a tree that did exactly what we were supposed to do day in and day out and never kind of like deviated from that,
Mhm.
um, you know, it's like I think the world would go on for a very long time. I think like a lot of the things that are being destroyed is usually because of people with so-called free will and the ability to use like wisdom for whatever ulterior motives they have.
Mhm.
And I kind of think that's what like all these religions and spirituality kind of like give us, is the understanding of like how to work in harmony with the rest of the universe,
Mhm.
you know?
No, definitely. I mean, I also just see it as a form of community building as well. I think that there's an aspect of just like humans being social creatures that a lot of the religions really do support in a very proactive kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
That in some sense, especially if you're like based in the U.S., sometimes it's really really difficult. Over the past couple of years to like really build communities in certain places or find communities in certain places. Religion kind of gives you a an immediate outlet where you can kind of build community, or build relationships in new places very very quickly. And there's an aspect of that that I deeply respect. Despite the fact that I would say I'm probably not the person that utilizes religion in that context very very often, but I've definitely seen that a lot, and I have a deep respect for the fact that that is something that religion can enable. Right? It's really hard to go to a new place and be like, oh, I have friends here immediately,
Yeah, yeah.
but religion can make that process really really quick and fast for a lot of people.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's crazy because I was just thinking, like in the next year, it's like I want to do some traveling. And the
Mhm.
first thing was like, if I travel and I don't know anybody, what's the easiest way for me to meet new friends? So it's like,
Mhm.
okay, it's like I'll go to Friday mosque, you know,
Mhm.
right when I get out there. And, you know, the services are the same, the people pray the same. They may speak a different language, but you know, you know exactly what they're doing, and it's like kind of
Mhm.
like easy to meet friends. So it's like actually that's a really good point,
Mhm.
because that would be the first thing that I would do if I went to a different place, is like immediately go to a mosque. My friend, he just got married in Vietnam,
Mhm.
and he's Christian. The first thing that he did when he went to Vietnam was go to a church,
Mhm.
because he was like, these are my people, you know. It's like wherever I go there's a church there, and it's like I could kind of like fit right in even if I don't speak the religion. So yeah, man, that's a very very good point. Very
Mhm.
valid, sir. Yeah.
It's definitely a power of community type thing that I do respect a lot. That is very universal for a lot of religions that have hit a certain critical mass of global people, right? So
Right.
there's certain religions, especially like the big religions, like if you're Buddhist, Christian, or Muslim, like very very easy to do that almost anywhere.
Yeah.
If you're even if you're Jewish, pretty easy to do that in most places. And then like surprise, I would say in my sense, being Sikh, it's actually not as difficult as people think. Most of the places I end up going, I can usually find a gurdwara,
Hmm.
but only a handful of places that I actually travel through where it was very very difficult for me to find one. Sometimes I have to look out of the way, but there's more out there than most people tend to realize. And so if I need to get to some place, I know I can do that relatively easily in most places around the world.
Yeah, for sure. And they're Gadoras, is that what they're called? Gadoras.
Gurdwaras,
Gurdwaras, yeah.
Gurdwara, I think.
Yeah,
I
you're
might
gonna
have
end
spelled
up
that slightly wrong.
yeah, you're gonna have to spell that for me every episode. But
No problem.
yeah, I've been seeing a lot of them pop up, and it's just gonna get more, which is kind
Hmm.
of cool. So
Yeah.
yeah, when there's a need, there's a way. The one thing that I don't see too much popping up, which is a discussion of our next episode, is
Hmm.
like voodoo ceremonies
Mm.
and things like that, which is a topic we don't. I don't know too much about voodooism or hoodooism, but it's like that's
Yeah.
something that I think we want to kind of like dive into in our
Yeah.
next episode. We were talking a little bit before this episode, like well, and you were telling me something that's interesting. What do you know about voodoo and hoodoo and all that stuff?
Yeah, I know very little as well. But I think that, part of this podcast is not only talking about stuff that we do know, which I think was pretty heavy in this episode. But also, like, what are the things that we very know very little about? And in terms of voodoo, all I really know is that it's more of a kind of migration oriented emergent like faith, or
Hmm.
spiritual practice. And really it's kind of just born out of a lot of the slave trade, coming
Hmm.
from West Africa into the Caribbean or the West Indies, kind of mixing together with a combination of, at least from what I learned when my few times and trips out in New Orleans, kind of mixed together with a couple of the Christian concepts or Christian saints, mixed together with a little bit of the native faith type stuff. And then also, well, something you had said, apparently maybe mixed together with some of the Indian things, which
Hmm.
might come from Indians that moved out to the West Indies as well. I know that that
Right.
was a relatively common area for a lot of them to go,
Yeah.
during some of the major migration periods.
Sure.
So I don't know. I don't know a lot. I know a couple of things, but I also know that it's like mixed together with a lot of like Hollywood media type stuff that wasn't
Yeah.
as well representative of it as the spiritual practice.
Right. Right. I think I'll probably just have like a lot of anecdotes from
Hmm.
like say my mom's side who and maybe even my dad's side who like were born in the South. So
Hmm.
they've seen a lot of that stuff before, but directly from like my trips to Haiti and like just seeing some crazy stuff out there.
Hmm.
Um so it's like most of what I'd probably bring to the whole voodoo thing is like anecdotal stuff. Um, but I kind of want to do some research about it. It's like this is going to kind
Hmm.
of like entice me to get deeper into it because like I said, it's like I just like learning stuff. Just as long as
Yeah.
I don't use it, it might be kind of cool to know more about it.
Hmm.
So yeah, like Haiti was like a trippy experience, and like my dad talks about some stuff or talked about some stuff. My mom knows a few things, especially when it comes to like Native American stuff.
Hmm.
I think there are forms of like voodoo almost in every tribal culture
Hmm.
that predates Western civilization. Um, I don't know if there's too much of kind of like that in Western, like so European. It could be like Wiccanism, but I think that's another topic. We'll talk about that another time.
Hmm.
So I think we'll just stick to voodoo and hoodoo, and that is our next discussion for the next time we meet.
Cool.
Yeah,
Sounds
man.
like it's going to be interesting.
It will. Let's do our homework. And for those of you guys who are out there, follow us on social media. Hopefully, we have a social media up now. Follow us on social media. All this stuff will be in the comments section, the description section. You guys could, yeah, just uh, give us your thoughts, ask us questions, and if you guys have anything that you don't like about what we're saying, please share that. And if you have any extra added tidbits, we'll be happy to hear from you guys.
Yeah. Share with anyone that you know, anyone that might want to yell at us that we're wrong, because that will also be interesting for us
Yeah.
to learn about what we're wrong about as well.
All right. I'm Boaz Abel, and I got my homie
Surgeon Singh,
Serge Singh, and we're out of here. We'll see you guys on the next episode of Two Dudes and One Spirit. Take care, guys.
thank you very much.